that. Going to slideshow, beginning. And can you see that on your screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. It's very clear.
Okay, that's good. Now let's see how I go to the next slide. No, I guess try it on my computer. It's of course a little difficult to talk about U.S. plans right at this moment in time because most of the time those plans are set out by our president. And here is an image of Donald Trump, our current president, signing a directive now almost 3 years ago that set out the current policy. As you well know, we have an election scheduled in a month from today, November the 3rd, and we may well have a new president, and that new president may well change these plans, and I'll come back to that. But these are the current plans, and this is what NASA is working on, is beginning with missions beyond low Earth orbit. The United States will lead the return of humans to the moon for long-term exploration and utilization, followed by human missions to Mars and other destinations. Interesting question what those other destinations might be. So one of the things that's happened is that this program has gotten a name. It's called Artemis. You'll see it frequently now in the next slides. Artemis is the sister of Apollo, and that name was chosen kind of on purpose, both to symbolize that that this is a 50 years later follow-on to Apollo, and also to symbolize the fact that the intent is that the first person back to the moon will be an American woman, not a man. So the line that's being used is Artemis is the program, put the first woman and the next man onto the surface of the moon. Here's the current plan. The Trump administration decided in March of 2019, so a year and a half ago, to accelerate what NASA was planning and set 2024 as the date for the first landing on the moon. And to achieve that, the idea is a series of missions, 3 in particular, Artemis 1, 2, and 3, over the next 4 years. Artemis 1 will be without a crew test of the whole system that will send the new spacecraft, which I'll talk about in a minute, called Orion, around the moon, but without a crew aboard. And that is currently scheduled for the end of 2021. Then in 2023, Artemis 2 will have a crew aboard, and that crew will orbit the moon, but not land. In 2023 and 2024, there will be launches with a different launch vehicle, a commercial launch vehicle, of elements of something called a gateway to deliver elements, those 2 elements in the middle, into a particular orbit. We'll talk about that orbit in a minute. And then in 2024, probably at the end of 2024, the first crewed mission with probably a crew of 4, but only 2 will go down to the lunar surface. In the interim, there will be very delivery of various elements to the lunar surface called using basically taxis, commercial lunar payload services. So the commercial sector will pre-deploy elements of the lunar infrastructure onto the lunar surface at the chosen landing site, so that when humans get to the moon in 2024, much of the infrastructure they'll need for that initial mission will be there. The idea is to have two people, one woman, one man, or potentially two women, on the lunar surface by 2024. That's to be followed by building up capabilities and on the moon, and in particular, getting experience relevant to later missions in the 2030s for going to Mars. You see, between 2025 and 2029, 4 Artemis missions of increasing capability, larger commercial payload systems. And if you see on the bottom, the first 3 missions will continue to put 2 people on the lunar surface, with the idea that by 2029, there will be enough capability to support 4 people on a lunar surface, including roving vehicles and all the power and life support they need. So that is the overall plan that NASA is pursuing. Now I'm going to try to run this video, which lasts about 5 minutes, which talks about this sequence. Let's see if it's going to work. This is supposed to link to YouTube. Is it going to work? Let me try it again. Ah. All right. I'm going to minimize this, try it this way. That gets us back to the same place. I guess it's not going to work. I will send the YouTube link. It worked a half an hour ago, of course, but you know, it's modern technology, and old people are not always a good connection. It will show a new spacecraft called Orion, a new launch vehicle, which is really an old launch vehicle called Space Launch System. It will talk about this lunar orbit station called Gateway, which is what's new about our approach to the moon in Artemis compared to Apollo. It's an orbit of the moon, which at its closest is a few hundred miles above the surface of the moon, and at the furthest distance, it's an elliptical orbit, is thousands of miles away from the moon, and allows people to come up from Earth, dock to the Gateway, then transfer to the lunar lander, which will already be pre-positioned at the Gateway, and go down to any place on the moon. Apollo was only able to reach the region at the equator of the moon. This orbit gives access to everywhere on the moon, and in particular, the poles of the moon, where the thought is that there are valuable resources. So So that's the system. SLS, Space Launch System, um, Orion spacecraft, Gateway, and a lunar lander, plus pre-positioned logistics and support elements on the surface of the moon. So that's more or less what the video would have said. Now, can I get out of it?
I have opened the YouTube channel, this video. If you like, I can share it instead of you.
Yeah, if you could do it. You found the video? Yep, there it is.
Between 1968 and 1972, America launched 9 human missions to the moon, 6 of which successfully touched down, allowing 12 men to walk on the lunar surface. NASA's next chapter of lunar exploration, called Artemis, has the task of not just going to the moon to create a long-term human presence on and around it, but also to prepare for ever more complex human missions to Mars. In short, everything we must be able to do here, we must first do here. So, what will an Artemis mission look like? Everything is designed and tested with our most important element in mind, the astronauts. This is their deep space, human-rated spacecraft called Orion, built in 3 parts. The crew module, where up to 4 astronauts will live and work throughout the flight. The service module, with life support systems for the crew and its own engine and fuel reserves. And a launch abort system, with engines capable of pulling the crew module to safety during launch should anything go wrong. To accomplish the task of launching our crew and heavy payloads, NASA is building the Space Launch System, comprising of a cargo hold, an exploration upper stage, a massive core stage, and 2 extended solid rocket boosters. Altogether, this is the world's most powerful rocket, and it exceeds the legendary Saturn V of the Apollo era in numerous ways. Sitting on the launch pad, the entire rocket, fully fueled, weighs just over 6 million pounds, 5.2 million of which is just the fuel. Once ignited, there is no stopping what comes next. All 4 RS-25 engines and the 2 solid rocket boosters come to life, thundering our crew upwards. 2 minutes after ignition, the solid rocket boosters are spent and released. 8 minutes after launch, the core stage is depleted and separated. The upper stage fires briefly, placing Orion into a parking orbit around the Earth. Here, the crew reconfigure the spacecraft and check systems to confirm everything is ready for deep space travel. With a go from mission control, the crew reignite the exploration upper stage engines to leave Earth entirely. The exact timing of this maneuver is critical to reach a speed that can escape Earth's gravitational pull, but also put Orion on a course that will intersect the moon days later. Once this burn is complete, the upper stage of the SLS is jettisoned, and the crew aboard Orion coast for several days toward all that awaits them at the moon. Approaching the moon, we see the fundamental differences between Artemis and Apollo. Instead of requiring Orion to serve as an expendable lunar command module or to carry a constrained lunar lander, the Artemis missions will take advantage of a different approach, pre-staging. Everything needed for lunar missions will be positioned in advance by commercial and international partners. This includes rovers, science experiments, and human-rated systems on the surface. But it also includes a dedicated lunar station in orbit around the moon called Gateway. Here at this station, we can pre-stage a robust lunar lander and establish a strong communications relay. Designed with open standards, the Gateway can be expanded as new missions and partnerships develop, allowing multiple human missions on the moon at the same time, and enabling ongoing science to be conducted even between human missions. The Gateway is also capable of adjusting its orbit to allow access to every part of the moon. Something the Apollo missions could not do. But the real key to this approach is placing Gateway in a unique halo orbit to perfect the maneuvers needed for Mars missions. And with the growing list of commercial and international opportunities, Gateway is the ideal hub between Earth and all that lies beyond. Returning to our crew as they approach Gateway, The Orion must match the elliptical orbit of the station in order to successfully dock. Once on board, pre-selected crew members transfer to the lunar lander, while those assigned to Gateway remain on station. The lunar lander system itself is built for 3 unique steps: descending from the halo orbit of Gateway down to low lunar orbit, descending from low lunar orbit to the surface, and once the lunar mission is complete, launching from the surface of the moon and descending all the way back to the orbiting Gateway. Once back aboard the Orion spacecraft and undocked from Gateway, crew fire their engine once to break out of the halo orbit. And once again, display the spacecraft around the moon, placing it on a multi-day trajectory back towards Earth. As they near the end of this journey, the service module is released, and the crew module is oriented heat shield first. Entering Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the friction of air slows down considerably, while also subjecting it to temperatures of 5,000 degrees. With the Orion now at just 300 miles per hour, a series of parachutes uniquely tested and produced for this moment deploy, decelerating the craft to just 20 miles per hour per splashdown. With each successful mission, Artemis ushers in the next wave of men and women to explore our moon and prove that together we are ready to go beyond.
Okay.
You can share back your screen.
Yep.
Because when I shared my screen, yours is interrupted.
Doesn't want to get off of this screen. There we go. So NASA released last month in September a 68-page, I think, overview of the Artemis program called the Artemis Plan. So if any of you want to get more detail on what that cartoon, everything works beautifully in a cartoon. In the real world, things don't often go as planned. But there are a lot of problems with the program as it now exists. And I'll talk now about a few of them in the context of what the plan says. Let's start with the rocket, the Space Launch System. There's nothing new about SLS except putting its elements together. There is some advanced technology in it, but it's still a chemical rocket with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen fuel in its core stage, and then solid rockets. The engines are actually old space shuttle engines. I think there are 25 of them left from the space shuttle program called the RS-25. And they will be, those old engines manufactured 10 or 20 years ago will actually be used for the first missions and then thrown away. They will not be reused like they were in the shuttle. And ultimately a production line for an expendable version of the shuttle main engine will be developed. The solid rockets are basically the same kind of solid rocket that was used with the space shuttle with an additional segment, so more solid fuel. And the upper stage is right now it's called an interim upper stage, not an exploration upper stage, and has limited power. So the vehicle has to evolve to be fully capable of all the missions that are being planned for it. the first vehicle is built. It's at a test site in southern United States, and sometime later in 2021, it will be, or maybe even sooner, subject to a so-called green test, where it will be fired for the full 8 minutes of the acceleration to orbit before it's cleared for integrating the core stage in the solids and a kind of boilerplate Orion module for a test of the whole system without a crew aboard, scheduled for sometime late next year. There are people who think this will never happen. That the former head of NASA, Charlie Bolden, said a few weeks ago, it will fade away. And some of the existing launch vehicles, like the Falcon Heavy, or new launch vehicles like the Blue Origin's New Glenn, will be used instead for the Artemis program. So there's a lot of uncertainty about the future of SLS. Orion is the least uncertain of all of these. Orion has been in one form or another under development since the mid 2000s, 2005, 2006. There was one uncrewed test of an Orion capsule back when? 2014? I was there, I should know. This is the former head of NASA before Bolden, named Mike Griffin, called it Apollo on steroids, a larger version of the same basic gumdrop design intended for recovery in the water, as you saw. It accommodate 4 people instead of 3. It can support a crew for 21 days on its own. And it's intended to be the crew transfer vehicle from Earth to the Gateway or wherever it may end up. The Orion for Artemis 1 is built and already at Kennedy Space Center undergoing tests, and the Orion for Artemis 2 is well along the way in development. So, as I say, there's the least technical uncertainty, schedule uncertainty, program uncertainty for Orion of any of the elements of this system. Here are the elements, initial elements of the, let me go back. This image does not show the service module of the Orion capsule, other than the solar panels, which are in fact part of the service module. It's the only international element of the Artemis system so far. The service module is based on the service module developed by the European Space Agency for earlier programs, particularly for its resupply missions to the International Space Station. And so Europe has agreed to provide the service module for at least the initial few missions. One of the political uncertainties is whether Europe will continue to provide that module for subsequent Artemis missions. Here are the initial elements of the Gateway. First, a power and propulsion element that will allow the Gateway to establish its existence in this halo orbit that circling the moon that you saw in the video. And then a habitation element that will be launched. Both of these launched probably on Falcon Heavies in the 2023 period. so that there is a place for Orion to dock once it gets to the moon's orbit. Again, there are lots of people that don't think this is the right way to go, but the current plan thinks of Gateway as a kind of space station, can accommodate up to 4 people at a time, that will be used as the staging base for Mars missions, as well as the staging base for lunar missions. That will expand over time. There are opportunities for non-US, both commercial and international contributions to build up a orbital outpost, but it's orbiting the moon, not the Earth. So something like the current space station, but 240,000 miles away from Earth as the staging base for other deep space missions to other destinations, as well as the moon. The idea is eventually to get a reusable human landing system that can shuttle between the Gateway and the lunar surface, so that you don't have to have a new landing system like the Apollo lunar module for every mission. The money for this has not been provided for by the US Congress. And the administrator of NASA, current administrator Jim Bridenstine, in testimony this week before Congress said, if we do not get the money by February of 2021 for the landing system, there's no way we're going to be able to land by 2024. So in terms of uncertainties, what this system will be, there are 3 current bids to build it, and you can't choose the builder until the money is there to actually pay for building the system. So the highest degree of program and technical uncertainty of the whole Artemis system is, I think, associated with the human landing system. And obviously we can't land on the moon without a landing system. So it will be up to, I think, the next president, whether it be Donald Trump reelected or Joe Biden elected, to decide on the funding for the landing system and whether to go ahead with the current plan. The goal is by 2029 to have on the surface of the moon 4 astronauts at the same time, to have an unpressurized rover there on the right where the astronauts can move around the surface, have eventually a pressurized rover, the one in the center, so that they can, without their spacesuits on, go greater distances away from a base camp, and the lunar lander where they can not only land but live for extended periods of time of up to a month duration for stays on the surface of the moon while they conduct surface operations. So as I'm suggesting, that's the plan. How much of it is real, how much of it will actually happen, to me is very uncertain. I do think that humans led by the United States, led by the United States government and NASA, will get back to the moon sometime in this decade. How much of that return to the moon will play out in accordance with the current plan, I think is not at all clear. That's the end of my presentation, so I'm going to stop the sharing and questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. John, for your valuable presentation. It provided us with very deep insights. We have a question regarding the funding of the space program. We have like 2 or 3 driving forces that we believe it will be providing a continuous funding of this program. First one, in 1967, there was a space treaty that summarizes that the land you find, you will take. in the shadow of the international competition between China, maybe Russia, and pretty much emerging countries that have human endeavors in space exploration, and of course the establishment of the Space Force, don't you think that this will pour a lot of fundings to continue the program?
Well, let's see. That's I have to deconstruct that question a little bit. First of all, the Space Force is a totally separate thing. NASA and the military have always been separate, funded out of separate budgets through separate processes. So the fact that a Space Force has been brought into creation and has a proposed $15 billion budget for the next fiscal year, which started 2 days ago. Congress hasn't passed the budgets. It has nothing to do with Artemis. So it's not a source of funding. Now, all of that funding in the United States will come out of the NASA budget. The Trump administration requested a $3 billion increase from 22 to $25 billion in the NASA fiscal 2021 budget, the fiscal year that just started. Congress has not acted on that budget. And those $3 billion, or some portion of it, are essential for getting started on the Artemis plan. The current plan through at least Artemis 3 and perhaps beyond, with the important exception of the European Space Agency contribution to Orion, is totally US. So funding from other countries is kind of irrelevant at the current time. And one of the interesting questions is whether a coalition of countries interested in lunar exploration and exploitation can be put together so that other countries can indeed contribute after Artemis 3 in the current plan. China has not indicated its intention to go to the lunar surface until the 2030s, and clearly is competing for space leadership with the United States. So a very, again, interesting question is whether there's any possibility of that changing. And the United States and China together leading lunar exploration doesn't seem very likely right now.
Thank you, sir. We have another 2 questions. Someone is interested in the study of space law, especially in international students. What do you recommend, or where do you recommend that they conduct their studies regarding the space law?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. That's the first thing to say. And to me, space law reflects policy. Policy comes first. The agreement among countries of how to proceed. Then when there's enough agreement, it gets registered in law. So one could come to George Washington University and study space policy and law. We have space law courses, but it's policy that is our high priority focus. The leading places, I think, around the world for studying space law are Leiden University in the Netherlands and McGill University in Canada. And there are some good space law in Keio University in Japan. So those are the places that come to mind when I hear space law. Leiden, McGill, Keio, and George Washington University.
Okay, thank you for your answer. We have one more question. Could you, sir, shed a light on the space education? We think that the space education currently is not enough in raising qualified specialists all around the globe. So what do you recommend about space education? Should we establish new universities, for example? Should we establish new programs in the existing universities? What do you think of the current situation regarding the space education?
Uh, well, there is one university organized totally around a space theme. That's called International Space University, based in Strasbourg, France, which offers an 11-month master's program and a 9-week summer program. One of my former students was one of the founders of ISU, and I have been involved in it since it started in 1988. Of course, everything is online right now, but if people want an intercultural, international, interdisciplinary exposure to all aspects of space, International Space University is about the only place to go. There are departments of aeronautics and astronautics, or something like that, that combine space and aviation education in many universities around the world, including in the United States. There are too many to really list, but there are very good places for technical education on various aspects of the space enterprise. So whether there's a need for new centers of excellence, I think as the increasing number of countries want to get active in the space arena, they want to train their own people rather than have them totally go overseas or to another country for their training. So at least the core of space training, space education, I think is important for any country that is serious about becoming active in the space area. So there's certainly room for new educational organizations and enterprises.
Thank you, sir, for enlightenment. We have another small question. Don't you think the international competition regarding the space would be motivating or provoking the Congress to pour more funding into the Artemis program?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. Certainly, the reason that Apollo got the very high levels of funding it got was competition with the Soviet Union during the Cold War period in the 1960s. And there are attempts now in the United States to suggest that it's important to fund Artemis because of Chinese competition, particularly China. Russia is not actively talking about a lunar program. The problem with competition is once you win the competition, as we won the race to the moon, the motivation disappears. And so I think it's much better to have a coalition of cooperating countries committed to a sustained program on the moon and Mars and beyond that doesn't depend on continuing competition for its financial support. But in the short run, clearly this country, the United States, is a competitive country and would be very happy taking the lead role in anything related to deep space exploration, particularly if our overall competitor for global leadership, which in the current time frame is the People's Republic of China, indicated that it was also pursuing a lunar program. But as I said earlier, if one believes Chinese plans, And so far, they've executed the plans that they've made public. China does not intend for a lunar program until the 2030s. It's going to spend the 2020s building and operating a space station.
Thank you, sir. That was very clear. We appreciate your value time and your presentation, and we are hoping to see you again in future events. Thank you again for your time, and I will be switching the talk now to Elif.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot for joining our meeting, and we want to give the field for the dear Nam Altaf.
Okay, now
One
we'll
final
be-
comment. Thanks everybody for the attention. I've got some problems in my house that require my attention this morning. Some electrical problems. And so I'm going to have to sign off. I won't be able to be back at the end, probably. I will check back in a while and see whether things are still going on. But otherwise, thanks for the attention.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much. So now we'll be switching to our next guest, Mr. Naeem. I'll be just giving a brief, I'm sorry. I'll be giving a brief introduction. Mr. Naif is a space tech CTO and IBM distinguished engineer. He is innovating from edge computing in space to supply chain optimization for space assets to autonomous cognitive framework for CubeSat swarms to growing challenges of space debris and collision avoidance to geospatial analysis with the satellite imagery to exploring quantum computing for opening new realms of possibilities for the new space age. Naeem's teams also partners with the various space agencies, universities, and space tech companies. He has been with IBM for 20 years and was recently appointed as technical advisor board member for Explore Mars. Very impressive biography, Mr. Naeem. I hope I didn't miss anything else. And also, Mr. Naeem has been active on our chat box. He was providing us with enough resources. He seems he's a very helpful engineer. So you are welcome, sir, to start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Samir and Elif. So let me start. Let me share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Yes, it's clear, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. So Samir, you explained it well, so I'll just skip and just so I'm based in Austin, Texas, and originally I'm from Pakistan, and so we run a Blue Tech Innovation Lab here in Austin, and we do lots of different interesting bleeding edge and cutting edge innovation projects. So before I go to space tech, just recently, if you guys just Google it, there is this autonomous ship, Mayflower, which will sail from UK to Boston. We just did all the technology behind that. So it was last week, it was announced, and take a look at it. That's another state-of-the-art stuff, which will be the future autonomous vessels. And this is all connected to the space and satellites. So just to mention that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, okay, IBM, right? So IBM is no stranger to the to space. All the way starting from the Apollo missions 50 years ago, the mainframe, which was behind people, men sending to the moon, and the landing of the astronauts in 1969. That is still regarded as one of the great engineering achievements in the human history. But besides the Apollo missions, IBM was involved in lots of other missions like the Project Mercury and John Glenn programs and other space shuttle providing supercomputers. So there's a lot of involvement throughout the last, I would say, 5 or 6 decades in the space and going forward. Let's take a look at what's happening in the industry. So you probably hear this word space economy or the global space economy. And if you look at by these leading analysts like from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Bank of America, this is a $1 trillion industry in the next 2 decades. This is honestly, this is just a beginning. And you probably know Dr. John explained very well the Artemis program. So there's a lot happening. And so looking at the landscape, the NASA has opened up, right? So for the public-private partnerships, in May, they used SpaceX to send their, through the Dragon, they sent 2 astronauts. And then there is 4 astronauts lined up for October 31st to go on the SpaceX to the International Space Station. Then with this Artemis program, like you saw the huge ecosystem, right? All the way from SLS to the to launcher, launch vehicles, to the lander, to the orbitals, to the gateway, rovers. It's a huge ecosystem for this program. And there are many private and public partnerships are happening. Many companies are coming up. Then the International Space Station, last year it was announced it's open for the commercial private. So, you guys can, anybody can, I think, go to the space station now. And I think I just heard last week that the next, one of the scenes in next Mission Impossible will be on space station. So I guess Tom Cruise will be going there. And so there is quite a bit. Then in the human space flight, like I mentioned, it's open for astronauts and private passengers. The SpaceX will be taking folks to into space, and then there is the Virgin Galactic that will take you to the edge of the space here. There are many launchers. The most prominent one is SpaceX, and then Rocket Lab, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin from the Amazon side. And then this another interesting topic, mega constellations. You probably noticed that every 2-3 weeks, SpaceX launches these basically pizza boxes of 60 satellites in a batch of 60. And to date, I think they have launched around 770 something. And the goal is to get up to 12 to 15,000. Then there is the Telesat, Leosat, Kuiper. They are yet to start, but the idea is to provide you the internet connectivity from the low Earth orbit. So, because as you know, the landlines are not everywhere on the planet, right? So in the remote areas, they want to provide connectivity from the orbit. So, but it brings more challenges. I'll talk about next. And the other thing which has happened in this industry, right? If you watch when the rockets comes back from SpaceX, right? The autonomous landing, that is a marvelous feat of engineering as well. So that has drastically dropped the cost of the launch. So in the space shuttle era, for 1 kg, it was around $19,000 per kg. Now it has dropped to 9,000 per kg to launch something in the space. And then then there's a rideshare opportunity where, as these rockets, they take their major payload, then they have room in the side where you can put your small sats and CubeSats so they can launch them. And then, like I said, the reusability of rockets. All of these things are bringing the cost really down. So I think this is just a beginning here. Just to give a quick overview of what is in this sector, right? And especially for the folks who are new to this industry and that want to understand what can be done here, right? So there's a lot of things you can do here. So there are like launch players, large ones like SpaceX and Blue Origin and ULA. Then there are small satellite launchers like Rocket Labs and others. There's a launch as a service. So NanoRacks basically has a deploying arm on space station where the rocket takes and you can deploy from there. You have CubeSats, you have satellite manufacturers. There's a lot of work happening from telecommunications point of view to provide internet connectivity. Then there is of course a regular communications and the broadcasting. Then this new space economy of tourism, space manufacturing, 3D printing, space mining, going to the asteroids and mine out of something from the asteroids, look for the water on the moon. Then the other thing for folks who like us are not in the hardware or with aerospace background, but if you are a software developer, there is a huge area for data analysis, especially in the geotemporal spatial analysis. So there is room for everyone, especially if you are close to software, because majority in the industry is software defined, and that's where it's heading, right? So as long as you're a developer, you're good. Okay, just another quick cap. I mean, this is if you're interested, go to spaceangel.com or Space Capital. They publish these reports quarterly, and this is very, very interesting to see where the industry is heading. So you can see that the startups are on the rise. Look at the amount of money involved to date. Investments around 135 billion. The two areas of in the space industry, is launch and satellites. Then if you look at what kind of payloads they do, mostly it's the communications and Earth observation. And just this year alone, you can look at it's around 12 billion. So the 3Q report should be out here in next 2-3 weeks. So because we just finished third quarter. So keep an eye on these things. That gives you an idea where the investments are happening, where the industry is heading. So it helps you to, make your plans. All right, so let's now go into the use cases. So there are, and I will go in detail into all of these just to give you an overview. So looking from the software point of view and others, right? Blockchain is going to play a huge role in this industry. What is blockchain? If at a high level, blockchain is the best use case for blockchain is supply chain industry, logistics. So people process paper. How can you digitize that? Have a provenance, auditing capabilities in an immutable some database repository, right? So you can go back and trace the whole history digitally, right? Instead of looking through the papers and faxing stuff and all that stuff. That's what the main purpose of blockchain is, to provide, right, in a distributed way. Now this can be applied to space cargo, space asset manufacturing, maintenance configuration, space traffic management. And again, what Dr. John showed you, this complex the ecosystem for Artemis, right? Imagine the asset manufacturing, configuration, and maintenance of those equipment. That's where you need blockchain. So you can trace everything, what's happening, because you have many players involved, even if you're building one satellite, right? So how do you know digitally, electronically, automatically what's happening where at any given time? Then the digital twin. Now, this pretty cool. I mean, digital twin is not a new concept. It's a new fancy word of saying that you have lots of sensors. So basically intelligent, instrumented these sensors everywhere, which can give you data. And now because of IoT, 5G networks, you can get all that information, and the modern technologies, you can build these sort of holograms of your actual physical asset, and you can in live see what's happening to your asset, and you can make changes whatever you want. Edge computing, this is a huge area in the telcos these days. You hear a lot about the cloud computing, and the next evolution is edge computing. Basically what edge computing means is, instead of having these gigantic data centers sitting, for example, the big data centers are sitting in America, in Europe, and in these different parts of the world. But what if you need a data center or some computation, dense computation near your university? So you can have an edge center there, which has this higher dense compute there, and it's connected to a cloud somewhere, right? So all of the computation you need to do in your university, it's done right there for you. So basically taking compute to where data is being produced. That's what edge computing in general means. And this, I'm trying to see how we can take edge computing to space, to satellites. I will talk about that later. Digital assistants. This is a low-hanging fruit. Think of like when you go on the websites today, you see chatbots, right? Those are your digital assistant. So these digital assistants, like I think this week there was news that on International Space Station there's a leak. They found a leak, and now the astronauts are trying to find that leak, right? This is where you need digital assistant, so they can help you, right? And if, for example, time is of essence, especially on a space station, every minute is counted for those astronauts. Every minute for the duration of their stay. There's a full schedule of how they're going to spend their time. So instead of, so if they want to go and search for a manual, instead of looking through the docs or whatever, right? They can have this digital assistant, speech to text, text to speech, and it can quickly grab information for you, what you're looking for. And the last but not least is quantum computing. And we'll talk about that. So that's the coolest thing. And, we should be, especially our next generation, the kids who are just coming into this field, they should be working on quantum computing. And I'll tell you the details and everything. Okay, let's go to the, let's talk about edge computing first. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to move this these videos on the side. I hope it's not obstructing the view of the slide. It's probably on just on my side. Okay, edge computing, right? So on International Space Station, it's like a science laboratory. It has a lot of experiments which happens over there, and then information is brought down to the ground, and then there is a further analysis happens and so forth and so on. The idea here is, okay, all those experiments which are happening on space station, we can just do the computation right there and then just bring the results back. That will reduce the time from months to literally a day or two. And that's the area which I'm working on with the ISS. Then extending that to the satellites. So one of the, like I mentioned, there are two big use cases satellites beyond the watching people and doing the surveillance, right? One is the communications, and the other one is the Earth observation in general, right? So you have lots of interesting use cases for Earth observation, looking for water droughts or how the glaciers are melting or how the forest is going away and all these things, right? And the movement of masses, especially now with this pandemic, which we are all in, right? How things are changing on the planet and the weather, how weather is affecting the patterns, right? This is where Earth observation satellites are used. NASA says that up to 80% of the data which is collected through these imaging satellites, right? The Earth is cloud covered. So that data is a waste, right? So we can have the like a convolutional neural networks on the satellites where it can basically filter out these things, right? So we don't need to send everything down. We only need to send which is meaningful, right? Which can give me some insights. So we can have these deep learning vision inferencing models on the space station, and we can take care of a lot of filtering right there. So there is a lot, again, thinking of edge computing from the ground, taking it all the way into the space. And like, for example, again, right now, the big use case is the Artemis, right? If you look at, again, you saw the journey and how different things are happening. There's a lot of computation, of course, will be happening, right? So you need data centers in space. And there are already companies who are talking about putting data centers in the lower Earth orbit to cater to the needs of the objects in the lower Earth orbit or middle Earth orbit or geo. So there is a need and there is stuff happening. So that's what I mean by edge computing in space. Okay, next area is blockchain. So let's take a look at blockchain use cases. So first one is the satellite manufacturing. So like in the beginning, I mentioned the basic concept of the blockchain is to provide this transparency, provenance auditing, trust in the system, trust with your suppliers, subcontractors, where the parts are coming from, the testing happening, all these different complex things, right? And this is where blockchain as a base system can provide links to all of these parts in the ecosystem or the life cycle of manufacturing of a satellite. So that is one use case. There's many use cases. Let's go through a few. One. Next one is the space cargo. Same thing. So for example, your university or you guys you build your own CubeSat and you want to send this CubeSat to the orbit. So you will build your CubeSat in your university or in your location. Then it will have to go to a testing facility for vibration testing, integration testing. From there, it will ship to a location where the integration will happen to the fairing, right? Somewhere, let's say if you are using SpaceX, it will go somewhere to US. And from there, once it's integrated, it will be transported to the launch site. And from there, it will be launched and then collect to ground station. There will be regulatory bodies involved. Just imagine again, how many different things are involved in this, right? So this is where, again, the blockchain because the logistics are very complicated in this industry, and you need almost real-time visibility what's happening to your insurance companies, regulatory authorities. You can also make data available to the academia, so you can track all of those things. Next one is the space traffic management data exchange. So this is a very interesting another area. So if you, this is a short history, right? So to date, in last 50, 60 years, we have launched 9,600 satellites. And out of those, 5,500 are active, the ones we know of. Just in 1 year, Starlink has launched around 800 satellites, and they want to launch 12,000 satellites. That's just one company. Then there's Kuiper, then there is LeoSat, OneWeb. Together, they want to launch 30 to 40,000 satellites in just next 3 years. Now, the challenge here is there's two ways of watching what's happening in the orbit. One is through the radars, and the second through is your telescope. And the data is dispersed and not shared, right? So to show you an example, let me show you an example what I mean by that. So let's go over here and take a look at, hopefully you can see the screen. Okay, so if I ask different agencies, right? We collect data and say, you know what, show me what's in the orbit, in the low Earth orbit, for example. It will show me this kind of a picture, where that we have these kinds of things, okay? If I say, you know, just show me what the US has information about, they show me this. And this is, by the way, publicly available data. So it shows me that these are things available in the orbit. If I ask the Russian agency to show me, what do you think it's in the orbit? It will show me this. It's quite different from both, right? So think of this as if you have probably seen the websites like FlightAware, which tracks the planes, right, movement. If a plane was coming to Istanbul from Austin, and the control tower sees 4 different routes of the same flight, it's going to be not good. It's going to be a disaster, right? Same thing is happening here. So we need to have what's real. It's not like you're showing me different paths for a given object. So in this case, that's where we have done some work, and actually the paper just got published last night. We are saying, you know, how can different agencies can come together and share information? Then there can be data curation happening, and then there are some algorithms which can determine what is the best answer. If you were looking for, I want to know where is this object 1, you know, object XYZ, give me the path in the orbit for that. So this is, again, you can do the data exchange through the blockchain. This picture, just as I was explaining you, the complexity in this industry, right? So if you talk about, in this simple example, if you're building, if you want to launch your own satellite, right? You go to a satellite manufacturer, they have suppliers, subsystem contractors, there's contract signed, there's purchase orders, design specs, test results. Then, you know, then there's a launch provider you have to pick, mission control, satellite operations. There are different regulatory bodies involved in this whole process. There's insurance companies, there's research institutes, right? So all of this, they want to be plugged into this whole life cycle of the launching XYZ to the space, right? If you have the system backed by blockchain, you can track all of these things. So this to show you how complex these things are and why technology can help here. All right, let's talk about the digital twin. So here's an example of again a lunar gateway. So what basically digital twin? It's a collection of real-time data via the sensors on board. So your equipment is instrumented, it's intelligent with all these different kinds of sensors. And now you have AI running on these components, which are further analyzing and providing you insights. And then you're bringing all that digital information back into some sort of a fancy display or visualization to know in real time what's happening to your whatever equipment you're looking at. So that's the area I'm very interested now in trying to connect with NASA and see how we can do something with this upcoming lunar gateway or a satellite, right, to have a digital twin. But that gives you another idea that if you have knowledge if you like playing with the Raspberry Pi, IoT sensors, right, that's what you can do using those technologies for digital twin. And digital twin can be anything. In the Industry 4.0, if you don't know, read about it, right? That's the future of the IoT world, Industry 4.0. And that's where all of these things can come together. All right, quantum computing. Like I said, everybody should be, especially the young ones. I mean, can't even spell quantum, but all the young ones, smart people, they should be looking into quantum computing. So quantum computing, honestly, it's magic, right? 10, 15 years from now, just watch what this thing can do. The amount of simultaneous computations you can do with these quantum computers, it's just mind-boggling. Right now, it's a very nascent technology. The world is around, I think, 58 to 53 qubits. And IBM just announced 1,000 qubits in the next 3 years. And there's D-Wave and there's other Rigetti, many different companies, right? But the race is on now for quantum computing. So in next 4 or 5 years, you will see a lot. Now, quantum computing, besides other use cases, optimization and AI machine learning, these are the biggest use cases. And this can be applicable to many different industries, right? Especially the decomposition of molecules, and in the biotech industry, it's huge. Looking into space tech. So Mars rover, which just went up in summer from NASA, right? So its job is to go, it will land sometime in February, and the job is to go and make 30 samples on the Mars. So how do you optimize that? How do you know? Because I'm sure that after those 30 or 40 that drill, probably, I mean, that's what their thing is. They need to get 30 samples in 1 year. How do you optimize that? Then about the space trajectory optimization. Today they use supercomputers, and even that takes time. Tomorrow you will have these, when you have the quantum advantage in next 5 to 10 years, these things literally will be done in minutes. And that's another use case for quantum. And that's why it's important to start learning today, because this is coming. This is the future. Then looking at the space debris or collision avoidance, or the space situational awareness. Because the thing is, it's like let's say you have one debris, and how many different dimensions you have. It can hit this one, or somebody can, or 10 things on it one. So all these probabilities and everything, this is where the quantum computing can try to figure it out. Or if like a traveling salesperson problem, the ESA, European Space Agency, is already building sort of to do a cleanup in the orbit, right? To go and start picking up this debris. So you only have limited fuel. How do you know which one to pick and stuff like that, right? So this is where quantum will really help. And before I go to this next one, I want to just to the folks, right, as I was mentioning. So for quantum, I'll put this in the chat also, but Qiskit. So Qiskit is basically the programming interface to the quantum computer. It's all Python, and I think that's the language of choice for many folks who are starting in the software development. So it's Python interface. Go over there or go on this website, sign up for quantum. You'll get a free account, and you guys can all hit the real quantum computer today. So I really highly recommend folks who are into software development start looking into quantum. Okay, the next area in this industry is ground stations. So think of ground stations, the concept we have in cloud. What cloud computing meant, right? Was like, for example, when we were like 15 years ago, working in the offices or working on some stuff, right? We will have to put a request in for server, and then some IT person will put a server in, install operating systems, install software, security, all that stuff, and almost a month has gone by. And then you get a system. And if you have to re-image, another 2-3 weeks, right? Today with cloud computing, it's literally 2 to 3 minutes. You swipe your credit card, you go to a cloud, any cloud provider, and in few minutes you have a system up and you can start doing your work, whatever you need to do. Think of the similar thing with ground stations. So, you want to get data from a particular satellite, pay as you go. So you can subscribe and you can say, you know what, I'm interested in getting data from this NOAA satellite or GeoSat. And you can schedule that window and it will go and, downlink the data and bring it to where you are. I'm thinking on the same concepts around the CubeSat, right? Personally, I'm very interested in launching a CubeSat. I've been working for a year now, and hopefully, inshallah, next year, my plan is to have a CubeSat up, right? But think about all the developing nations. It's hard for them to get a CubeSat, right, and launch it. Why can't we have a CubeSat as a service, right? So where it's just like a sort of a mini cloud. So if you want to run any of your experiments, you can just send your payload up, get your stuff done, and get it done. In this way, you don't have to worry about anything about building a CubeSat or cost and everything, right? So it's the same thing. So basically, what it meant was similar to this, right? Like I mentioned, you have the ground stations. They're doing all the work of connecting to your satellite of your choice, and then the data comes back to in whatever cloud you work in, right? And from there, you can do further analysis on the data. All right, so open source projects. Just last yesterday, Thursday. So Thursday, we announced 2 open source projects, and it's available. You can see the links down there. So the first one is the space situational awareness, right? This is one of the hottest topic in the industry right now in space, right? Like space debris, like I mentioned, right? There is so much congestion already started over there. On September 22nd, International Space Station, they had to do a maneuver. This was their 3rd maneuver in 1 year, only in this year. And there was some upper body rocket part from Japanese satellite. It was coming in its path. So not only they had to maneuver, but they also had asked the astronauts, 3 of them over there, to go into that Soyuz spacecraft for in case they have to abort. Now, this is a very, very expensive operation to do. And they have done this 3 times already. So you can imagine what's happening there, right? And imagine when 3 years from now, you will have 30,000 of these satellites. So, and to show you that, right? Let me show you one thing, and it will, okay. All right, just let me go here. Look at this, right? So this is the last 24 hours of data, right? So this is our orbit. You can see a bunch of stuff there. And if I want to see what's happening with Starlink, right? So and I don't know if you guys actually have seen in your region, I mean, this website Starlink, you can go at night and see this train of satellites passing by, and they last up like 3 to 4 minutes. So you can see all these trains, right? These are all the Starlink satellites. And this is just 700-800. When there will be 30,000 of these, imagine, right? And in general, what we have over there is this. And I'll put the link in the chat. If you look at this, you will see that there are these different rocket paths, all this stuff, right? So it's all just junk flowing. And then the challenge of this for the amateur astronomers like us, right, who like to look at night and do some. Think of those billion-dollar satellites which are going up in Chile, and in those big ones, they're doing deep Earth observation. In their data at night, when they're doing observation for whole night, they will start seeing streaks of this noise in their data. So when you have so much of these things, when you take a data, you will have so much noise which you have to filter now. So that is a huge concern even for the astronomers. So anyways, just to, give you some idea of what's happening. And, so basically space situational awareness, we took the data which is available from the public website. We are working, we're going to enhance this. So this is like scratching the surface. The idea here is to do conjunction search. So if I want to know which of the orbits which of the objects will come closer to each other within next, I don't know, 200 kilometers, it will show you, the conjunction search will show you. It's an API built, and it's the project is available on IBM's GitHub. So feel free to take a look, and if you want to add more to it. That was the one project we did. The second one was the CubeSat Cognitive Autonomous Framework. So this is a framework. So in future, I envision we'll have these swarm of CubeSats. So again, think of it as a distributed computers in a swarm, and they're in the orbit. And if I want some work to be done, let's take an example like a hurricane is coming in Atlantic Ocean, and from the ground, I get a weather alert, and I send this alert to the CubeSat. And those CubeSat, when they get an alert, because they have a mesh network with this framework, and they have the models are already uploaded, and we can update them as well. They know what to do now. So then they know we have to track this hurricane, and it will check with all its peers who has the resources to handle this job. And then it will create a logical cluster through messaging and start focusing on that experiment. And once it's done, it will release all the sources. So basically, a distributed computing happening, and then we can have reinforcement learning over there. So I don't even want to tell you, the CubeSat swarm should be smart enough, because it has all the different kinds of imaging sensors and everything, that it should be able to detect a problem, and based on that, start acting on it. And so that's the idea behind this framework. It's all based on Kubernetes, and Kubernetes, as you know, today, it's the operating system of today, right? So all the modern cloud native development is happening on Kubernetes. So that's what we built on top of this. Other than that, let's see what else is there. And that's it. So those are all the different areas I wanted to discuss. So any questions?
Dear Samara, your voice is muted.
Thank you, Mr. Naeem, for your highly technical presentation. I enjoyed it so much, and I hope it might motivate and inspire our youngsters into multi-topics. One of them was the quantum computing, and
Yes.
I'm an architect, but I was interested in quantum mechanics. Maybe it is a sister branch of science to the quantum computing. And I wanted to thank you also about giving the resources for studying of the quantum computing. If you just would be kind enough to share with us the platform that the youngsters could register
Yes.
the Python, and you already did this. Okay, thank you so much. So now it's available for anyone who would like to try to start studying quantum computing. I do believe on a personal level that it's important for the new generations and for the humanity.
Yes.
Everyone should have an idea about quantum computing, even if he is not into the computing domain, but it's important for many reasons. So I wanted to discuss with you the problem of the space debris.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, we are facing a lot of challenges regarding the space debris. One of them is the monitoring of the size of the part of the space debris that is
Yes.
less than 1 centimeter.
Yes.
It needs a lot of resources and a lot of, maybe the quantum computing would be one of the solutions. Maybe we need a little bit of an advancement in the monitoring infrastructure. But we have about 100 million pieces of space debris that is less or maybe even equal to 1 centimeter. So do you suggest future solutions, or do you have something in mind to share with us about regarding this issue? Big number of space debris, everyone has its own trajectory and its own orbit, and you can't really control it, and it's increasing year by year.
Yes. Well, I think this is where the pros and cons of commercialization also, right? That, I mean,
Yes.
this will be controlled. First of all, the future things there needs to be policies defined, right? Right now, it's like they say wild west in the orbit, right? You can just
Yes.
put your stuff. Anybody can just go and do things, right? So first of all, the nations have to decide. There has to be policy, because I just read that there is a Russian company who wants to broadcast advertisement from the orbit. It's like, right, but I mean, if you're going to destroy the night, it's already so much light pollution, right? So I think the policies has to come there. The next thing is the radars, right? This is very expensive stuff. It's not, a university or we can do that, right? There are amateurs, astronomers who are using satellites to, but that is, by sorts of crowdsourcing, they're doing it, right? But I think it has to be done at a global level, where these space agencies, they decide that we are going to, first of all, be, open in sharing the data with everyone, right? Because the data is not shared. Everybody is holding on to the data, right? So data has to be open, because unless as you know, we can't manage what we can't monitor, right? So if I don't know what's happening there, I cannot do much about it. So the data has to be open to the public, right? Or to the institutions. So they can then come up with ideas how to, because this thing is not stopping. I mean, these mega constellations, I don't see how it's going to get stopped unless there is some policy there, right? So I think the institutions will play a big role in identifying and highlighting. There is a professor, you probably know, Moriba, from UT Austin here in Austin. He is very vocal about this. That's who I work with on these topics. He is very vocal about it, but I think we need more people, more, more institutions to come up and start raising their voice. Otherwise, it will be very, it's
Messy.
not going to be good. Yeah.
Yes, it has been. Human beings are very talented in polluting every domain that they enter. They started with the
Yes.
water, the oceans, the land, and now the space. So the expectation of scientists in the next 10 years, we might be locked down here on Earth due to the increasing number of space debris. Our
Yes.
really problem is the small sized space debris. We can monitor the big sized space debris like
Yes.
parts of the satellites or rockets, but the small sized, that is pea sized or 1 centimeter, 12, about one or less than 1 centimeter, is very serious, very hazardous, and at the same time you can't really control or monitor something.
Yes.
So let me switch to another inquiry. You have been so insightful about the space economy.
Yes.
There is an opinion, of course, a scientific opinion that suggests that we have a new domains of space economy that we didn't really think about, and it's simply like saying you cannot expect you can expect what is not expected. So it's
Hmm.
like a paradox, you can expect what is not expected. That means that there will be new domains in economy, maybe
Hmm.
something called space medicine and space surgeries, some serious diseases that couldn't be recovered, but to be recovered only in zero gravity environment. Some
Yes.
operations, maybe some kind of medicine couldn't be produced unless it is in a zero gravity environment. Starting
Hmm.
from the 3D printing technology in
Yes.
in a zero gravity environment and taking from here, can you just give us an insight about this issue?
So, I mean, it's absolutely right. I mean, especially when we talk about going to Mars, right? The most important thing is human health. That is the most important thing,
Yes,
because
yes,
what
true.
if you spend billions and the human land, and by the time it lands, the human is not no longer there, right? So that is the most, one of the biggest thing. But when we talk about like you mentioned, right, economy, there's so much thing, right? Like 3D printing. Just like earlier this year, Lockheed Martin, they actually repaired the satellite in the orbit. So if your satellite's life is 15 years, now you just extended it. You are going to do manufacturing. Like they're already talking about going to the moon, right? And building the robots to do manufacturing over there. So like Caterpillar, they are already talking about these things which will, I mean, robotics is going to play a huge role, right? So manufacturing is going to be huge. Then the biotech stuff, like they're already trying to build or grow tissues, right? If somebody wants help with cancer or something in the microgravity on space station, there's DNA sequencing happening. So there's a lot of work happens in the zero gravity or microgravity on the space station. But I think robotics, the manufacturing, the 3D printing, the actually maintenance of this equipment, it has to be done, because let's say if we extend from a little bit deeper to Mars, right? It's almost a one-way trip. So you have to go and first build the colonies, right, through all this 3D printing, and have a sustainable life so that humans can go. And this is probably like in the Explore Mars conference last month, when Elon Musk was there, he was saying it's going to take just a decade to test their Starship, which they test right here. It's like 100 miles from my home in the south of Texas. That's where they're doing the testing, right? So then after that, when the rockets are ready, then you have to send these robotic systems, and then comes the humans, right? Probably 20, 30 years
Yeah,
from
they're
now.
like the essential infrastructure before the arrival of human beings.
Yes.
But there is an approach, and I'm one of these of the supporters of this approach, which say that we are developing space technology not only for exploring the space, new lands, but also to serve our prosperity and humanity on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like breaking down this technology into sustainable technologies, maybe the research and communication technologies that we develop for space also could be used in Earth. So
Yes.
I think, yeah, I do believe that really the space programs in the new era will advances and accelerate our technologies, which will be reflected on our lifestyle on Earth.
It's an inspiration. It
Yes,
inspires
yes,
us as
true.
humans, right? So, and that makes us to do some great things. And a lot of things, as you mentioned, right? The things which we have developed in space, or especially in space station, they are used on the ground. So there's a
Yes,
lot of
yes,
stuff,
true.
right? Yep.
So thank you so much for this insightful and very valuable presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I will now leave the word to Elif. I think Mr. Robert Zubrin couldn't make it today, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. I have already emailed him again, but I think he will not be able to join us today. But
okay,
he didn't tell us about this. Actually, I wasn't expected this thing. I'm
it's
really
okay.
sorry for problem.
It's okay. We will modify a little bit our time schedule, but I would like to request a small request from Mr. Naeem, if you would be kind enough to give us any way of communication with you in future events, even on our organizing level, or if you'd like to share it with our youngsters also, that will be so much appreciated. So,
Yes, I think Alif, she has my information,
okay,
and
okay, that would
I'm
be.
always happy to help anyone. I mean, anyone to mentor people and to guide them, always here to help.
We
Thanks a
do
lot.
really thank you for this, and
Yes.
we appreciate your time and your presentation. We would like
You're
also
most
and
welcome.
hope to see you in the future events. Thank you so much, sir.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So, switching now to Aleph, our
Yeah,
new sessions,
yeah.
when it will be starting. So, we will be taking like a break for a while.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, we will be taking a break, and then shortly we will be rejoining again in our new sessions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please.
For the listeners, I want to explain a little bit things. It's gonna be start the next panel at 5:30. It will be space and science for the women in the space and science panel. And then it's gonna take 1 hour, 30 minutes. After that, we will start for space architecture panel. Thanks a lot.
So I'll be seeing you in the space architecture panel as well. Please
Yeah,
join us all. I have a very good impression. I hope you like it. So see
yeah.
you then. Enjoy the present. Thank you so much, all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I want to be first astronaut in Turkey and train astronauts. Hi everyone, I want to be first astronaut in Turkey and train astronauts. I mean scuba diving training, aircraft training in the future, survival skills and advanced sciences course. I also take lessons from NASA's basic sciences courses and I also learn foreign language. Of course, while I'm going to these dreams, I also had a dream of becoming an astrophysicist. The subject I want to talk about today is STEM for young people. I have also been part of STEM education since I was little, and so is it. I think everyone should see STEM as a part of their life because I think this is the most important factor in the development of society. Follow your dreams. Never give up.
Hello, I am Elif, connecting from Istanbul. I have wanted to be an astronaut since I was a little child, so this congress is really special for me. Astronauts typically board a spaceship to fly on important missions for a specific purpose. They have different assigned responsibilities to uphold as they are aboard the spacecraft. Also, astronauts can see the world far away. I think it's so incredible and fascinating. Therefore, being an astronaut is pretty exciting for me. It's so hard to define my feeling of dreaming it.
Hello, I'm Jaylin and I'm here to talk about women's place in astronomy. Women faced many difficulties in the past to achieve equal treatment in their rights, and still they haven't fully achieved their aim. It was the same for astronomy or any other branch of science. Despite all this, we also have women who have cracked their seats and stretched their heads out of the earth. The planet Earth. Valentina Tereshkova, Sally Ride, Peggy Watson, Svetlana Savitskaya are some of these awesome women. Although there is no development in this direction in my country yet, we have women like Faria Özel, Defne Ruth, or Nusret Gökdoğan who achieved great success in astronomy. You don't need to be beautiful or married to make our dreams come true, to be an astronaut, an engineer, an architect, and we won't give up until these prejudices are destroyed. I hope that in the future, women will have no trouble doing their profession and we will not have to remind others of our rights.
Merhaba arkadaşlar.
Hadi duymak istemiyorum. Hello, dear Jenny, are you there? Oh yeah, we will start our panel at 5:30 Turkey time. I think we have a little time. We're gonna start it 30 minutes later, maybe. Thanks a lot. Oh, I should open your voice first. Just a second, please. Just a second, please. Yeah.
No worries. I love being early and I'm always doubting my conversion. And I thought, I know that it's 9:30 my time, but I just am going to be close by. So I'm just and turn my camera off, but you can know that I am here.
Yeah. Thanks
All
a
right.
lot.
No problem.